All right. ABCs of School Funding by Karen Skinder. Introduction. Section 422, the Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act of 2001. The 2001 Act provides a new type of exempt facility bond called the Qualified Publication Educational Facility Bond. While the provisions allowing these bonds is IRC Section 142A 13 and 142K provide these rules for these bonds. What is the effective date? What is the effective date of 142A13? How long does it last? Bonds may be issued pursuant to 142A13 after December 31st, 2001. These are subset provisions which provides the Section 142A13 as well as all provisions amendments made by the 2001 Act should not apply to the bonds issued after December 31st, 2010. What are these bonds? IRCs or 142A13 basically always allows public-private partnerships between school districts and private developers. How do these partnerships work? The bonds proceeds as loaned to a private for-profit developer who builds the school. The school is then leased to the school district on a long-term basis. The school lease is less than the cost of construction. For detailed information about how it works, see Exhibit A, reprinted within the permission of the Heritage Foundation. Because the developer actually owns property, the developer makes up the difference between the loan amount and the lease amount, leasing out the schooling building in and off hours. So, the developer actually owns property. The developer makes up the difference between the loan amount and these lease amounts by leasing out the school buildings in off hours. Advantages to school district: the school district gets a school built much faster and at lower cost. Advantages to the developer: developer profits and directly proportional to the amount of additional leases than it can securely on property. What are qualified public education facilities? IRC Section 142K provides the purpose of Section 142A13 qualified public educational facilities is a school facility in which a part of the public elementary or secondary school and owned by a private for-profit corporation pursuant to the public-private partnership agreement with the state and local educational agencies. What is a school facility? An IRC Section 142K3 defines a school facility as any school building, any functionally related subordinate facility or land with respect to such building, including any stadium, other facilities primarily used for school events. Any property under which the Section 168 would apply, but for Section 179 for the use of facility described in subparagraph A and B. Why are public elementary and secondary schools? Defining elementary and secondary schools, the IRC Section 142K4 refers to the definition set forth in the Elementary School Education for 1965. According to elementary means a nonprofit instructional day, means a nonprofit institutional day or residential school, including public elementary charter schools, that provides elementary education as determined under the state law. A secondary school means a nonprofit institutional day or residential school, including the public secondary charter school that provides secondary education as determined by under the state law, except for the term does not include the education beyond grade 12. What is a corporation? According to the IRC 7701A3, the term corporation includes the association, joint stock companies, insurance companies. See also the Treasury Regulation Section 301-7701-2, the Public-Private Partnership Agreement. According to the IRC Section 142K2, the Public-Private Partnership Agreement is an agreement under the corporation that agrees to constructional rehabilitation, refurbishing, and equipping a school facility. And transfer next bulletin, transfer a school facility to the agencies for no additional consideration at the end of the agreement. Also, the term agreement cannot exceed the term of issue to be used to provide the school facility. Also, the term of agreement cannot be exceed the term of the issue be used to provide the school facility. What is a state and local agency? According to Section 7801, the Elementary Secondary School Act of 1965, the state educational agency is a state educational agency in the state which the state educational agency is the sole educational agency for all the public schools. That's the state educational agency is responsible for all the public schools since 1965. Even in Section 7801 Elementary School Secondary School Act of 1965. Local educational agencies are more common means of public board of education, other public authority legally constituted within the state, either administrative control or direction, or to perform service function of public elementary, secondary schools in a county, city, county, township, school district, or other public divisions in the state, or other combinations of school districts of counties that recognize in each state as an administrative agency for its public elementary school and secondary school. 2. The volume cap limitations exclusion from the Section 146 AIRC Section 146G3 has amended to exclude qualified public education facilities from volume cap limitations sections Section 146. However, there is a limit to aggregate amount these bonds. These can be issued other these limits are described in Section 142K5. Agreement limits of the amount of the bonds that can be issued annually are IRC Section 142K provides a limit of total amounts of bonds that can be issued. For qualified public educational facilities per year, the limit is equal to or the greater of $10 multiplied by the state population, or $5 million. Because of the size of the population, only Wyoming, this population with a population of 494,423 is limited to $5 million. All other states will be able to issue bonds as well as above $5 million because of their population. The residential population estimates for all states and U.S. possessions for bonds issued during the calendar year 2002 can be found in Notice 2002-12 and 2002-8 and IRB 547. Under the Section 142KB, a state can allocate aggregate amount of the bonds whatever manner it deems appropriate. Carry forward unassumed limitations. IRC 142KB5 provides that the state can afford any unused limitation. However, the carryover is limited to 3 calendar years following the calendar year in which the unused limitation arose. D. The only purpose the carryover can be used for is qualified public education facilities. Exemption to the rebate. Smaller issuers accept the rebate. The 2001 Act also amended the IRC Section 148.54D and Section 7 to provide for an increase of the amount of bonds government units may be issued without being subject to arbitrage rebate requirement. Governmental units may issue up to $15 million in bonds in each calendar year, provided that at least $10 million of the bonds are used to finance the public school construction as defined in IRC Section 148.54C and 7, or 6. Sorry, 3. Sorry. Sections 148.54C and 4. Section 4. Effective date. The amendment date by 2011 is effective for the bonds issued on their calendar years being after December 31st, 2001. Prior rebate exemption applicable to school construction. Prior to the amendment made by the 2001 Act, governmental issues could be met in a small issue exceptional to the rebate. They issued no more than $1 million in governmental bonds per calendar year. Up to $5 million of proceeds of which were financed or finance construction as defined in the IRC Section 148.54C Section 4 for public schools. This provision was effective for the bonds issued in December 31st, 1997. Example 1. Example 1. On June 1st, 1997, the County A issues $3 million in bonds to proceed, which are accepted to be used to make capital repairs to the City Hall. From January 1st to May 30th, 1997, the County had issued $1 million in governmental bonds. On June 1st, 1997, the County accepts to issue $5 million in bonds from July 1st to December 31st, 1997, which County A bonds, if any, can meet any criteria for the small issue exception for the rebate. Note, None of the bonds can be met in the small issuer exception for the rebate. The date of the issue bonds is before December 31st, 1997. The issuer has plans to issue more than $5 million in governmental bonds for the calendar. Therefore, the County A is not a smaller issue. B, on July 15th, 1998, County B issues $3 million in bonds proceeds which are accepted to be used to the capital repairs of the public school B1. County B has also already issued $3 million for public school construction expenditures in 1998. The county also expects to issue $2 million in non-school governmental bonds during the rest of 1998, which the County B bonds, if any, can make any criteria for the small issue exception for the rebate. The date of issue of the bonds is before December 31st, 2001, before and after the December 31st, 1997. Therefore, only $2 million in bonds for the non-school governmental purpose. Only $5 million of the $1 million issued for the school construction can qualify for the smaller issue exception to rebate. As a result, could take the position for the entire July 1st, 1998 issue do not meet the small issuer's exception to the rebate. This issue may still be able to meet one of the spending exemptions to rebate. Example 3. During 2002, County C issued $15 million in governmental bonds. $5 million bonds were public school construction, while $10 million were for general governmental purposes. Which County C, if any, can meet the criteria for the smaller issue exception for the rebate. None of the bonds meet the criteria for the smaller issue exception for the rebate. Although the bonds are issued before December 31st, 2001, the issuer is permitted to issue up to $15 million in government bonds. The calendar to meet the small issuer's exception, the issuer must spend at least $10 million of the proceeds of the bonds to provide the public school construction. In County C case, only $5 million were public school construction, while $10 million in bonds were issued for the governmental purposes. Other requirements, Section 147. All of the requirements of the IRC Section 147 applies to the qualified public educational facility bonds issued under the Section 142A13, except for the Sections 147. C. Changes to the Form 8038 for the types of bonds. Line 11.1 has been added to Part 2 Form 0838 to include the bonds issued qualified public educational facility bonds. Line 47 has been added to Part 8 to allow issuers to indicate the amount of volume cap that has been allocated to the issuer. A copy of the state as certification as applicable should be attached. The change of the Form is 08038 for the instruction attached in Exhibit B. Okay, this is the Heritage Forge. I'm going to reduce out of this. And I guess this is Heritage Foundation Background Executive Summary. How public and private partnerships can facilitate public school construction. In the United States, the funding, construction, renovation, public elementary, secondary school historically can be sole responsibility for the state and local governments, but in receipt for the president of some of the members of the Congress has tapped the new federal spending and lending programs to assist the communities in meeting the school facility needs. To the date, none of the proposals have become law or school construction remains responsibility of the states and localities. The increased intensity and frequency with which these proposals are put forward, however, they ultimately may help the efforts to prevail. Such an outcome could weaken the American system of federalism, increase the federal spending and lending, and centralize Washington, yet another responsibility of local government. Before this debate, who should be public school construction is renewed, the Congress, federal, state, local officials would be advised to consider and innovate public-private partnerships approach that has been adopted here and abroad. The partnerships allow communities to upgrade the public school facilities in substantial lower costs and less time than purely government efforts typically require in recent years. For example, public schools in Canada provinces, Nova Scotia, and Great Britain, and some U.S. jurisdictions, the implementation programs or pilot projects encourage private investors to construct and add-on public school buildings to the school system specifications. In turn, the private partners would lease the facility, the school system at rent level below the public school system would have incurred had built and operated school. The producers of domestic policy studies of the Department of Heritage Foundation, 214 Massachusetts Avenue, Northeast Washington, D.C. 2000002 4999 202-546-4400 www.heritage.org. A case study effectiveness. Nova Scotia offers a clearest example of how public-private partnerships facilitate school construction. For example, by the end of 1998, as many as 41 new schools had been either completed or approved by the construction under the public-private partnership program. In the next 3 years, Nova Scotia accepts to replace 10% of its schools through such partnerships. The schools are turnkey operations. The facility is fully operational and lease begins complete with all classroom furnishings such as desks, shelves, chalkboards, computers wired to the internet and the internet school electrical network, furnished administrative offices, landscaping, athletic facilities. The school system provides the teachers, aides, principals, administrative staff, and maintains the full control of the curriculum and all other educational services and decisions. Okay. The chief advantage to the arrangement of the Nova Scotia system is speed that is able to upgrade the school facilities to an average of 15% saving. It's achieved through the leasing agreements of the private developer owners. The school system leases the facility for 20 years as a predetermined rent at the less than lower than capitalized cost of the construction and furnishing. Whether the developer covers the additional costs, earning the profit, the intensive use of the facility during the period which is not used to the school system, and effectively the private developer owner leasing the facility to the public school system, the morning to the mid-afternoon, Monday through Friday, after the additional after hours of the weekend is negotiated. During the remaining hours of the day, as well as the weekend and the holidays over the summer when the facility otherwise would remain idle, the developer leases the classroom space to other educational-orientated entities, such as for-profit trade schools and various civic, political, religious groups for pre-approved purposes. The purposes are carefully spelled out in the lease to ensure the activities of the appropriate educational facilities used by children do not occur in the building. The potential savings. If an approach implemented in the United States, the potential savings greater than 15% of the Nova Scotia realized that the private financial ownership and structure would allow the school system to avoid additional costs imposed on the federal, state, and mandates, such as mandates include prevailing wages laws, environmental regulations, minority set-asides with an often substantial to the cost of design, construction, of publicly funded buildings. No such mandates exist in Canada, and the actual cost of the construct of private school facility are just slightly less than the cost of public school construction. Then the rent savings are the rise primarily intensive which the facility is used to other purposes. An indication of potential construction savings could occur with other public, private partnerships in the United States would reveal newly opened public and elementary school charter schools in Florida and team of the local design building firm to construct its facilities. Using an approach similar to Nova Scotia's plan, money is provided with the community to build the school. The per student construction cost fell between 22% and 34% below the school average of the construction of public elementary schools. These savings were due largely to a series of initiated design effective jointly devised and builder school systems. Legislative efforts. Over more than 30 schools of construction bills introduced in the 105th Congress, only one offers the initiative approach to the public school renovations, reconstruction, and harnessing the energy, resources, expertise of the private sector, the public school partnership arts, and introduced by Senator Bob Graham, Democrat of Florida, of the statute 2397 proposed amending the federal tax code to expand allowable use of the tax-exempt private activity bonds to include construction of privately owned school facilities leased to public school systems. If brought in to enhance the versatility, the bill could serve as a foundation of legislative plan that encourages the creation of innovative public-private partnerships to build public schools more rapidly and lower costs across the country. Ronald D. Uteri, Ph.D. of the Grover M. Harmon Fellow Federal Budgetary Affairs of the Heritage Foundation. How public-private partnerships can facilitate public school construction? Ronald D. H. Ut, Ph.D. Number 1257, February 25th, 1999. In recent years, the percentage of these shortage classroom spaces in the main existing school facilities are obsolete and badly deteriorated has led to the number of proposals Congress to increase the government spending lending to the purpose of the construction of school facilities. It also has led to the growing number of the proposals to create some time a federal school construction program to share with the financial burden of here, and there, and had been responsible for local governments with growing assistance with the governments. To date, none of the proposals to become a law in school construction remains the responsibility of the state and localities. The increased intensity frequency of which the proposals are put forward, however, the ultimate may help those efforts such as an outcome could weaken the American system of federalism, increase the federal spending and lending, centralize Washington yet another responsibility of local government. Once a school construction bill is introduced to the 105th Congress, however, it offers innovation and approach to the public school renovation construction by harnessing the energy, resources, expertise of a private sector. The Public School Partnership Act, introduced by Bob Graham, Democrat of Florida, in 2397, would amend the federal tax code to allow the U.S. tax-exempt private activity funds for construction prior to the privately owned school facility lease back to the public school system. If the bill was broadened and enhanced, the versatility could serve as a foundation for the legislative plan. They encourage the use of the public-private partnership to build a public school more rapidly at a lower cost across the country. This is also by the same publishing as Heritage Ford, also produced by the Domestic Policy Studies in its department. The public school construction today. In 1997, the United States spent a total of $35.5 million. In 1997, the United States spent $35.5 billion on a new school construction, with $8.4 billion, or 24%, was spent on private schools. The fastest growing component to the total school construction spending is $27.1 billion devoted to public school construction in 1997, represents an increase of 20% should inflation adjust spending since 1993, when private school construction had soared ahead of 58% over the same period. School age population increased 6.6%, suggests that the most aggregated level spending of the school facility outpaced the growth of student population. The recent aggregated national construction figure appears to be the reference of prevailing the view of the deficiency available for the quality school facilities, but such aggregated trends must significantly differentiate within among communities, regions, the quality of school facilities. Such numbers of examples tell little about the extent which the condition existing in the school facilities deteriorated to the point at which the effects of the quality of education of the safety of or the safety of students, or the existence of technology changes to the instruction have rendered the sound older facilities below the desired standards of performance. They tell a little bit of continuing demographics between the metropolitan area regions with leave surplus facilities. One community often depopulated central cities and rural communities. But severe shortages in others, such as fast-growing fringe suburbs and exurbs. Unfortunately, no systematic census inventory school exists which may be accurate, objective assessment of their adequacy and needs. Neither is there a way to compare the information on which is available today with the existed past to determine whether the situation is improving. As aggregated spending data would suggest, the worsening of the anecdotes from the selected states and communities would indicate, too. The second footnote says one comprehensive effort of the assess the renovation needs to be the U.S. General Accounting Office, schools, facilities, and profiles of school condition by state. The GAO and HES 964148, June 1997 information compiled in the report was derived from the GAU questionnaire sent to the national sample of about 10,000 schools. Because of the varying technical expertise, 9,956 respondents say comparison of the quality remediation costs for the difficult to make. Special problems in central cities and fast-growing suburbs. In older cities, communities, the major school construction issued the repair and renovation older school buildings, many of which are the poor condition because of the systematic neglect by the city governments. In late 1998, examples of the Chief Executive Officer, District of Columbia, announced a plan to spend $1 billion in school repairs over the next 10 years. The footnote number 3. In early 1999, the New York City Board of Education estimated it would spend $11 billion billion for school construction over the next 5 years. That's in footnote 4. And I'm going to continue reading the next paragraph. In the response to concerns over the local stewardship of the public school structures, some state courts have required the state government to provide financial assistance to the cities, replace, upgrade the school facilities. In other courses, the state government voluntarily chose to do so. In May 1998, the state of New Jersey, for example, ordered a New Jersey Supreme Court to replace and refurbish deteriorated school buildings in its 28 poorest school districts. Governor Christine Whitman, Republican, responded to the proposing to spend $5.3 billion over the next 10 years. And within $2.6 billion would be earmarked to the district. Then Virginia Governor James Gilmore agreed to the new $100 million state-funded school construction program in order to get state legislature to enact the personal property tax cut of the automobiles he had proposed during the election campaign. At the other extremity, the classroom shortage is that often occur in the suburban fringe and in the exurbs, where population growth is the most rapid, with the school construction often fails to keep pace of the student enrollment. As a result, the classroom facilities overcrowded schools may be temporary mobile classrooms accounted to the growth in students. Often the circumstances of the school system in suburban fringe connected to growth in tax revenues derived in new household debt does not keep the pace with a higher school construction costs incurred with the servings that they agree state and federal financial assistance to meet their immediate